I returned home early. We originally agreed to have dinner with a client, but the client canceled at short notice. My car had already driven to Midtown Manhattan, only 10 minutes away from home. I thought forget it, go back and change into comfortable clothes, take a bath, and finish today's damn quarterly report again. The elevator reached the 15th floor and the corridor was very quiet. There are only 2 units on our floor. The one opposite was sold last month and the new owner has not yet moved in. I took out the key and didn't rush to open the door. I listened inside first. There is no sound. Jason should still be in the company. He was recently discussing a biotechnology project and said he would have meetings with the West Coast until midnight every day. I turned the key and pushed the door open. The entrance light is on. There is an extra pair of high heels next to the shoe cabinet. Nude, Stuart Weitzman, one size smaller than me. I said nothing. I didn't even stop. I bent down and took off my high heels, neatly placed them in the shoe cabinet, and then walked inside with bare feet. There was no one in the living room, no one in the kitchen, and there was still a coffee cup on the dining table that I left before I left in the morning, and he didn't help me put it away. At the end of the corridor, the door to the master bedroom was closed. A ray of light leaked from under the door. I stood at the door. The door is unlocked. I heard a sound inside, very soft. It was a woman's laughter, suppressed, as if she was afraid of being heard but couldn't help it. Then Jason's voice was very low. He said something I didn't hear clearly, and the woman laughed again. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Or 10 minutes. I have no idea. I just remember thinking something really stupid. The bra I'm wearing today is a set, black, La Perla, which I bought myself on sale last month. Why should I think about this? I don't know either. I didn't push the door. I turned around, walked back to the entrance, and took out my phone from my bag. I sent Jason a text message, I'll be home in 20 minutes. Send. Then turn the phone over and buckle it on the shoe cabinet. I stood in the entrance hall for a while and heard a sudden silence in the bedroom, followed by a rustling sound. Someone stood up in a hurry, and someone spoke in a lowered voice. The woman's footsteps walked into the master bedroom, probably into the master bathroom. Jason's footsteps walked towards the door. But I didn't wait for him to come out. I turned around and opened the door and walked out. When the elevator went downstairs, I found that I had been biting my lip so hard that there was already the taste of blood on my lower lip. I let go of my mouth and looked at myself in the elevator mirror. No makeup, no messy hair, black suit skirt, pearl earrings, looking like a decent, 31-year-old financial analyst who just came out of the office. I should cry, right? Normal people should cry. But there was only one thought in my mind. I couldn't go home. At least not now. What would I do if I went back in 20 minutes and bumped into that woman walking out of my house? Or Jason looking at me with that "I know you know, but I'm pretending you don't" look? Would I rush in and tear her hair out? Do I throw things? Would I scream like a mad woman? I won't. What I hate most is losing control. So I sat down downstairs at the bar we used to go to. It's the kind you'll find everywhere in New York, with dim lights, a marble bar, and a glass of old-fashioned for $26. We used to come here on weekends. Jason ordered whiskey and I ordered white wine. He told me about another difficult customer he had solved today, and I told him how my model ran out of data that exceeded expectations. Looks like a normal, successful, young New York couple. I sat at the corner of the bar and ordered a glass of red wine. I took 3 sips. Then I saw him. He was sitting at the other end of the bar, alone, with an untouched glass of beer in front of him. He was wearing a dark blue suit without a tie, and the cuffs were rolled up twice, revealing his thin but strong wrists. He was looking at his phone, his brows furrowed slightly, as if he had just read an email he didn't want to see. I know him. It's not like knowing him, it's just that I've met him. At Jason's company's annual dinner last month, he stood in the corner talking to someone, holding a glass of champagne but barely drinking it. Someone told me that he was a lawyer, but I didn't remember his name. The reason I remember him is simple: he looked at people differently than all the men in this city. Men in this city look at women in 2 ways. One is "I want to sleep with you," and the other is "You are not worth my time." He looked at people like he was looking at the title page of a book. He was not the kind of person who rushes to flip into it, but the kind of person who stood there first, thinking that the book might be interesting, but not sure when to start reading it. I was standing with Jason, who was having a heated chat with a hedge fund guy, and I was standing next to him with a glass of barely drunk champagne, playing the role of a proper wife. The lawyer looked at me. Just one glance. Then he looked away. But I saw something move in his eyes. As if he recognized something. Now I'm sitting in a bar, and I just caught my husband in my bed with another woman. I took 3 sips of red wine, My fingers are cold, and my heart is beating so fast it feels like it's about to pop out of my throat. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is that I can't go back, not now, not to that bed, that laughter, that text message. I'll be home in 20 minutes. That text message was sent by me. I hand-delivered it. I gave my bedroom to the woman. I sent my husband a 20-minute countdown, and then I sat in the bar downstairs, like all decent, educated women in this city who don't cry in public, holding a glass of red wine and pretending like nothing happened. I saw the lawyer put down his cell phone, raised his head, and met my gaze. His eyes were a dark brown, almost black in this light. He looked at me for 2 seconds and then recognized me. His expression changed, not surprise, but a slight, almost invisible nervousness. He seemed to be judging whether I was alone and wanted to be disturbed. I didn't give him a chance to judge. I walked over with the red wine in hand, my high heels stepping on the marble floor, and every step was steady. I sat down on the bar stool next to him, put my glass on the bar, and turned to look at him. I said, "Are you free tonight?" He was stunned for a second. It's really only a second. Then he put down his phone, turned to face me, and in a low voice with a hint of a Chicago accent, said, "I'm always available." His voice is very nice. It's not the kind that's deliberately lowered to pretend to be deep, it's very natural and low, like the C string of a cello. He looked at me the same way as last month, as if he was reading the title page of a book, but this time I noticed something else in his eyes, not desire, not curiosity, but some very old emotion. Like he had actually read the book and was just checking to see if it was the same version. I asked him what his name was. He said Ryan. Ryan Hayes. I said my name was Emily. He said I know. I'm not sure if he meant he knew my name at the dinner party last month or something else. I didn't ask. I took a sip of my wine, he took a sip of his beer, and we sat side by side at the bar, chatting a few words, as two strangers would do. He is a lawyer specializing in commercial litigation. He has worked at Sullivan and Cromwell for 6 years and was recently promoted to partner. He lives in Tribeca, has a cat, loves to run, and hates winter. I listened to him and slowly circled my fingers around the rim of the glass. I'm thinking about that scene in the bedroom. Is that woman gone? Has Jason packed up? Did he see my text message? How would he reply? Should I reply with "Okay, waiting for you," or simply not reply and pretend not to see it? The phone vibrated. I picked it up and read it. Jason replied, "Okay, be careful on the road." 3 words. A comma. A full stop. He was even telling me to be careful on the road. I stared at the screen for 5 seconds, then locked it, turned the phone over and clasped it on the bar. Ryan didn't ask me what was wrong. He asked no questions. He just ordered another drink, placed it in front of me, and moved his stool 2 inches toward me. It's not an aggressive approach, it's a "I'm here, you can do it if you want" approach. We were at the bar for about 40 minutes. I can't remember exactly what we talked about. I just remember that there were fine lines at the corners of his eyes when he smiled. He said that he went to the University of Chicago from a small town in Illinois in high school. No one in his family went to college, and he was the first. He said that his mother still thinks that lawyers are the kind of people who shout "I object" in court. I smiled a little. Really laughed. Then I said I had to go. He nodded, picked up a napkin from the bar, wrote something on it and handed it to me. I looked down and saw a phone number. "If you want," he said, "you can call me." I folded the napkin and put it in my bag. When I stood up, my legs felt a little weak, not because of the alcohol, but because of the exhaustion that comes after the adrenaline wears off. I took 2 steps in high heels and heard him stand up and follow me. I looked back at him. He stood next to the bar, holding the unfinished glass of beer in his hand, his expression calm, but his eyes never left me. He said, "Are you sure it's okay for you to be alone?" I said, "I'm alone every day." He didn't answer the question. He just nodded and sat back down. I walked out of the bar, stood on the street, and took a deep breath. The air in New York in November is so cold and dry that it fills my lungs like crushed ice. I glanced up at the window of our apartment. The lights were on and the curtains were drawn. I went upstairs, opened the door, and walked into the hallway. The high heels next to the shoe cabinet are missing. The floor was clean. There is a faint smell of perfume in the air, not mine, but a sweet floral scent, mixed with Jason's usual woody perfume, like a candy dropped into an ashtray. Jason was sitting on the sofa in the living room looking at his mobile phone. He was wearing home clothes and his hair was still wet, as if he had just taken a shower. Seeing me coming in, he raised his head and showed a very casual smile. "You're back? Have you had dinner?" I looked at him. His eyes are very blue, and his eyelashes are very long. When he smiles, the corners of his eyes will curve, the kind of curve that makes people feel sincere. I watched this face for 7 years, from when I was 23 to 31, from his apartment in Chicago to our house in New York. I said, "I've eaten." He patted the seat next to the sofa. "Come sit here and let me tell you something. There was something wrong with the biotechnology project today. Over there on the West Coast, I'm a little tired," I said. "I'm going to take a shower first." His smile paused for maybe a few tenths of a second, and then returned to its original state. "Okay, you rest first." I walked into the bedroom. The bed was neatly made, the quilt had been remade, and there were still some indentations on the pillows. I opened the closet, and all my clothes were there, as were his clothes, hanging neatly. The woman's high heels were gone, but the smell of her perfume was still in the air, like a tiny thorn piercing the depths of her nose. I closed the closet door, walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and turned the water temperature to the highest setting. As the steam filled the air, I finally started to shiver. Not because of the cold. I stood under the shower head. The water was so hot that my skin turned red. I was shaking and my teeth were chattering. I looked at myself in the mirror. My makeup was smudged, my mascara was smeared into 2 black spots, and the blood on my lips had dried and formed a small dark red scab. I looked like a drowning man being fished out. But I didn't cry. I haven't cried in years. I lay in bed that night, Jason sleeping next to me, breathing steadily, with a hand on my waist, just like he had every night for the past 7 years. I stared at the ceiling with my eyes open, replaying the image over and over in my mind, the bedroom door, the light under the crack of the door, the woman's laughter. And that text message I sent. "I'll be home in 20 minutes. I gave them 20 minutes. I gave it with my own hands. I didn't rush in, I didn't question, I didn't throw anything, I didn't scream. I stood outside the door, like a decent, educated woman who wouldn't lose control, giving my husband and his lover 20 minutes. This is not the first time. I know this isn't the first time. About 2 years ago, I found a long brown hair on Jason's shirt. I'm blonde. I didn't ask. A year ago, he came home at 3 o'clock in the morning. He smelled of alcohol and another kind of perfume. I said, "You had a hard time socializing," and he said yes, and then went to take a shower. I didn't ask. 6 months ago, I saw a Soho hotel charge on his credit card statement on the day he told me he was going to Boston for a business trip. I looked at it for 3 seconds and then put the bill back where it belonged. I didn't ask. I never asked. Because I know the answer. I knew he would say, "You are overthinking," and would look at me with that gentle, helpless smile and say, "Emily, you have to learn to trust." He will turn the problem into my problem. I am too sensitive, I am too insecure, I am too overthinking. Then I'll apologize. I would say, "I'm sorry, I've been too stressed lately." Then he would say, "It's okay, come here and give me a hug." Then it's business as usual. I don't know when this started. Maybe it started in the first year of our marriage. Maybe from the beginning, this marriage was a game whose rules I didn't know. The next morning, I woke up an hour earlier than Jason. I made coffee, toasted bread, laid out breakfast, and sat at the dining table waiting for him. When he came out, he saw the breakfast and said with a smile, "Why is it so good today?" I said, "I'm in a good mood today." He sat down, took a sip of coffee, and looked at me. His eyes were very gentle, and the intensity of tenderness was just enough to make a person believe that she was loved. "Emily," he said, "were you unhappy yesterday?" I took a bite of bread. "No. You didn't look good when you came back. Just tired." He nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He picked up the phone and took a look at it, put it down, and then picked up the coffee and took a sip. He was wearing a light blue shirt today, with the cuffs unbuttoned, exposing a section of his wrist. He looked relaxed and at ease, like a happily married man should. Then he said something that I will never forget in my life. "You know, sometimes I think you are too sensible." I stopped biting the bread. He continued, his tone was very casual, as if he was saying that the weather was nice today. "Other women have already made trouble when encountering this kind of thing, but you never make trouble. Aren't you afraid that I will spoil you?" I looked at him. He was also looking at me, and there was a light in his eyes that I had never seen before, not tenderness, not love, but a very subtle, almost contented look. It's like the satisfaction an experimenter feels when he observes his experimental subjects and finds that the results are in line with expectations. I said, "What's the matter?" He smiled. That kind of laugh sends chills down my spine. "What do you think?" My fingers tightened around the bread, my nails digging into the crispy surface. My heart began to beat faster, not in anger, but in fear, the instinctive reaction I have when I realize I'm in a huge trap. He knows. He knows I know. He might even know that I stood outside the door yesterday. He may have heard the sound of my keys, or he may have seen my mobile phone on the shoe cabinet in the entrance hall. He probably calculated that I would stand outside the door, that I would send that text, that I would go down to the bar, come back, take a shower, get into bed, and pretend nothing happened. He knows it all. Because that's how he designed it. I looked into his blue eyes and suddenly realized something. I had never seen fear in these eyes. Not once. No matter what I did or said, he always had this calm, gentle, and slightly superior attitude. Just like how he behaves when facing his opponents at the negotiating table, always in control of the situation and always thinking 3 steps ahead of others. And I was within 3 steps of him from beginning to end. I didn't take his word for it. I stood up, put the dishes in the dishwasher, picked up my bag, and said I was going to work. He sat at the dining table without moving, holding the coffee cup and smiling at me. Be careful on the road. Those 4 words again. I dug the napkin out of my bag in the taxi to work. Ryan's phone number is a bit sloppy, but every digit is clear. I looked at it for a long time, then refolded the napkin and stuffed it into the innermost compartment of my wallet. I didn't call him. At least not today. For the next 3 days, everything was business as usual. I go out at 7 in the morning and come home at 8 in the evening. Jason is sometimes earlier than me and sometimes later than me. We are like 2 well-oiled gears, each turning in the same space, occasionally touching, making a little noise, and then continuing to turn. But he changed. It's not getting worse, it's getting better. He started cooking. It's not the kind of cooking where you order takeout and put it on the plate. It's really standing in the kitchen, wearing an apron, chopping onions, frying steaks, and making the dishes look like a restaurant. He makes better pasta than any restaurant I've ever had. He said he was learning cooking recently and wanted to surprise me. He started coming home early. He used to come back after 10 o'clock, but now he is home at 7 o'clock. When I come in, he will wait for me at the entrance, take my bag, help me take off my coat, and hang it up. He started saying things he had never said before. For example, "You look great today." Have I ever said I'm lucky to marry you, Emily? I think our relationship has gotten better recently. The last one is the one that disturbs me the most. Our relationship has gotten better recently. The premise of this sentence is that our relationship was not good before. But I've never heard him admit it. In his narrative, our marriage had always been perfect. He never quarreled, never had a Cold War, and never forgot anniversaries. He does all the things a good husband is supposed to do: make money, take care of the family, be occasionally romantic, and never absent. He only occasionally slept with other women in our bedroom. But now he took the initiative to mention that the relationship has gotten better. That means he's adjusting his strategy. It took me 3 days to confirm this. On the 4th night, he cooked a table of dishes, opened the red wine, and lit candles. I sat at the dining table, watching him put the cut steak on my plate, and suddenly asked something I had always wanted to ask but never said. "Jason, did you cheat on me because you didn't love me?" His hand holding the knife and fork paused. Really only once. Then he put down his knife and fork, leaned back in his chair, and looked at me. His expression was not one of guilt when he was exposed, nor anger when he was questioned, but an expression that I couldn't define, something close to "I've finally waited until you asked this question." Then he laughed. He said, "It's not that I don't love you. I just want to see how much you love me." My fingers clenched beneath the tablecloth. He continued, his voice was very calm, as if he was making an investment report. "You know, I am curious about many things. Stocks, options, market sentiment. You can't analyze these things clearly, because you never know what others are thinking. But you are different, Emily." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, folding his hands, and resting his chin on the back of his hands, like a psychiatrist observing his patient. "You are the most controlled person I have ever met. You never lose control. You are always decent. You are never embarrassed in public. Do you know how curious that makes me?" My voice came out of my throat and was as dry as sandpaper. "So you cheated on me to test me?" Test is such a strong word. He shook his head, even with a bit of reproach in his tone. "I want to see how much you care about me. If you don't care, you won't care. If you care, you will show it. But you never do." He paused and looked at me, the satisfied light in his eyes getting stronger and stronger. "You know what you did yesterday?" "No, the day before yesterday, the day you came home early. Do you know what you did? You sent that text. You gave me 20 minutes. Then you went downstairs, sat at the bar for 40 minutes, came back and pretended nothing happened." My blood froze. "You think I don't know you are outside the door?" His voice was as soft as telling a secret. "I heard the sound of your key being inserted into the lock. When you were standing at the door, Sarah, that's the girl that day, she was so nervous, she said, 'What if your wife comes back?' I said, 'No, she will leave.'" He smiled. You see, I know you better than you know yourself. I sat there, feeling cold all over. The candle on the table was burning, and the candle tears fell drop by drop on the silver candlestick, solidifying into a small piece of white solid. I looked at the candle tears and suddenly felt that it was me burned, dripping down, and solidifying into a shape that I didn't even recognize. Every time, Jason said, every time you pretended not to know, every time you made excuses for me, every time you smiled and said it's okay, I knew one thing, how afraid you were of losing me. He reached across the table and took my hand. His hands were warm, with dry palms and sharp knuckles, the kind of hands that made people feel reliable. But you know, his voice suddenly became very soft and gentle, so gentle that it made me want to vomit. The more you act like this, the more I want to see you collapse. I want to see you cry just once. I want to see you throwing things and screaming and saying I hate you like other women. But you never have. He squeezed my fingers. Do you know what this means? I didn't speak. This means that you are not in love with me. What you love is the very thing of not losing. What you are afraid of is not me cheating. What you are afraid of is divorce. What you fear is the kind of failure your mother experienced. What you're afraid of is becoming her. My eyes suddenly became hot. Jason let go of my hand, leaned back in the chair, took a sip of red wine. His expression returned to that of a gentle, decent, good husband. So you see, it's not that I don't love you. It's you who don't know how to be loved. He stood up, walked around the table, walked behind me, bent down, and hugged me from behind. His chin rested on my shoulder, his lips were close to my ear, and his voice was as low as hypnosis. But it's okay, I'll teach you. I didn't cry that night. I sat at the dining table, watching the candles burn out, watching the red wine oxidize and turn sour in the cup, and watching the lights of Manhattan outside the window go out one by one. Jason went to take a shower, and the sound of water and his occasional humming came from the bathroom. He was humming a song. I couldn't hear what it was, but the melody was very brisk, as if he was humming a song that he would hum after winning something. I looked down at my hands. The place he held was still warm. I slowly clenched that hand into a fist, and my nails dug into my palm, which was just painful. Is he right? What I love is not him, but the matter of not losing itself? I closed my eyes, and a picture came to my mind. I was 6 years old, standing on the corridor in front of my home, hearing my mother crying and my father throwing things in the living room. That was their last fight. The next day my dad moved out, and my mom was sitting on the kitchen floor, wearing pajamas, her hair disheveled, holding a divorce agreement in her hand, looked at me, and said, Emily, never be like your mom. Never be like your mom. Don't lose control. Don't cry. Don't let anyone see your embarrassment. Don't let people know you care. Don't give anyone the right to hurt you. So I learned to be decent. Learned restraint. I learned to stand outside the door for 20 minutes and then send a text message saying, I'll be home in 20 minutes. Learned to pretend you didn't notice someone else's hair on their shirt. I learned to say thank you when my husband comes home at 3 in the morning with the smell of someone else's perfume. I'm not in love with him. I'm preventing myself from turning into my mother. Jason said he would teach me. What did he teach me? Teach me how to be a qualified experimental subject within his rules. Teach me how to stay decent in the face of cheating. Teach me how to turn love into a game he always wins. Late that night, I was lying next to Jason. He was asleep, breathing steadily, and had a hand on my waist. I stared at the ceiling with my eyes open, replaying what he said over and over again in my mind. The more you act like this, the more I want to see you collapse. He wanted to see me break down. After 7 years of marriage, his goal was not to make me happy, but to make me collapse. My restraint is not a reason for him to cherish, but a motivation for his attack. Every time I pretended not to know, every time I smiled and said it didn't matter, he wouldn't feel my wife is so generous, he would feel it's not even close, not enough, I haven't seen her cry yet. I played his game for 7 years and didn't even know it was a game. On the 3rd day, I did something. I opened my wallet, took out the napkin, and dialed Ryan's number. The phone rang 3 times and was picked up. Hey. It was just one word, but his voice somehow made me relax a little. Not the everything is fine kind of relaxation, but the you can stop pretending everything is fine kind of relaxation. I said, Ryan? I'm Emily. The other night at the bar, I remember you, he said. Pause, then ask, are you okay? This question almost made me cry. Not because it's so profound, but because it's the only question this week that no one has a predetermined answer to. Jason wouldn't ask me, are you okay, because he knew the answer and he knew I wouldn't tell the truth. My colleagues won't ask me because our relationships are limited to work emails and nods in the conference room. My mom won't ask me, because the content of our calls will always be her asking me, Jason, is he okay with you? I say very good, she says that's okay, and then hangs up. But Ryan asked. And there was something very serious in his voice, like he really wanted to know the answer, whether that answer was good or bad. I said, I don't know. He was silent for 2 seconds. Then he said, is it convenient for you to talk now? I looked at the office door. It was closed. Outside the window was the skyline of Lower Manhattan, and the sun was setting, dyeing the Hudson River orange. Convenient. Okay. Then you speak and I listen. I said it. I didn't tell everything. I only said part of it. I have been having some problems with Jason recently, and I feel like something is not right in our marriage, and I need someone to talk to. I didn't tell him what happened that night before I was at the bar. I didn't tell him about the laughter I heard standing outside my bedroom door. I didn't tell him what Jason said. It's not because I don't trust him, it's because those words are still stuck in my throat, like a fishbone that I can't swallow or spit out. But Ryan listened very carefully. He didn't interrupt me, didn't say what should you do, didn't say perfunctory words like men are like this or you deserve better. He just said when I finished a paragraph, and then waited when I couldn't continue. He waited for me 3 times. Finally I said, I don't seem to know what love is anymore. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. It was so long that I thought he died. Then he said something. Emily, have you ever thought that it's not that you don't know what love is, you just have never been loved correctly? My eyes grew hot. Your mother taught you not to lose control. Your ex-boyfriend taught you not to have expectations. Your husband he paused, as if considering his words. Your husband taught you not to ask questions. But no one teaches you how to accept someone being nice to you, because no one has ever really been nice to you. My tears fell. It's not the kind of crying, it's the kind that is silent and falling drop by drop. I sat in the office, looking at the sunset outside the window. Tears flowed down my cheeks to my chin, dripping on my shirt, leaving a small patch of dark color. Ryan said nothing on the other end of the phone. He heard my breathing change, he knew I was crying, but he didn't say stop crying or I'm sorry I shouldn't have said this. He just stayed quietly on the other end of the phone, like a rope, letting me know he was still there when I was falling. After about a minute, I sniffed and said, how do you know? His voice was so low that I almost didn't hear him clearly, because I am the same. I didn't go home that night. I sent Jason a text message saying that the company was working overtime and might stay up all night. He replied instantly, okay, make sure to rest. I sat on the chair in my office and looked out the window at the night view of Manhattan. After Ryan hung up the phone, I kept thinking about what he said. No one is ever really nice to you. Is this true? I thought about my past. My mother loves me, but her love is you have to be strong, you have to be independent, you can't rely on anyone. I've had ex-boyfriends who loved me, but their love was you're beautiful, you're smart, but can you please stop being so cool? Jason loves me. No, Jason doesn't love me. Jason treated me like a guinea pig, a code he was trying to crack, a puzzle he'd spent 7 years trying to make me cry. No one just stands there, asking for nothing, testing nothing, proving nothing, just being nice to me. No one has ever asked me, are you okay, and then actually waited for an answer. I picked up my phone and opened Ryan's chat window. We have never added friends and only have 1 call record. I stared at that number for a long time, typed a line, deleted it, typed another line, and deleted it again. Finally, I locked the screen, threw my phone on the table, laid it on my arm, and closed my eyes. I had a lot of dreams that night. I dreamed that I was 6 years old and stood on the corridor in front of my house. I dreamed that my mother was sitting on the kitchen floor and said, never be like mommy. I dreamed that Jason held my hand at the dining table and said, the more you act like this, the more I want to see you break down. I dreamed that Ryan looked at me in the bar with that very old emotion in his eyes, like he had already read a book and was just checking to see if it was the same version. It was daylight when I woke up. There are 2 messages on the phone. One is from Jason, good morning, did you sleep well last night? The other is from an unknown number, with only 4 words, good morning, Emily. It's Ryan. I don't know how he got my number. Maybe he saved it, maybe he asked someone else. I have no idea. I only know these 4 simple words, which made me feel a little warmer on this November morning. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan and I began to communicate frequently. At first it was just text messages. He sends a good morning message at 8 o'clock. Every morning, sometimes with a weather emoji, sometimes without. I replied morning. Then at noon, he would send a photo of his lunch, sometimes a sandwich, sometimes a salad, with the sentence this restaurant is not bad, I will bring you here next time. I reply with okay or an emoticon. Very ordinary. It was so ordinary that it looked like two normal people making friends normally. But I know it's not ordinary. Because I started to look forward to hearing from him. When I wake up every morning, the first thing I do is not check my email, but my phone. When I see the words "Good morning" from him, I have a very strange feeling, not the excitement of a racing heart, but a very light and slow warmth, like the first sip of hot coffee on a winter morning. Jason noticed the change in me. "You seem to be in a good mood recently," he said one night while scrolling through his phone on the sofa. He glanced at me and asked, "Is there any good news at work?" "No," I said, "it's just that the weather has improved." "Yeah." He didn't ask again. But I know he noticed. Jason's sensitivity to emotions is far beyond ordinary people. This is the reason why he can win at the negotiation table, and it is also the reason why he can conduct experiments on me for 7 years. He could smell the slightest change in me, like a shark smelling blood in the water. He began to increase his efforts to be a good husband. Flowers are delivered more frequently, dinners are cooked more carefully, and the frequency of saying "I love you" has been increased from once a day to 3 times a day. He even started delivering meals to me when I was working overtime, asking the driver to deliver an insulated bag downstairs to my company. Inside was a carefully prepared lunch with a handwritten note: "Thank you for your hard work, come back soon." My colleague saw the bento and said, "Your husband is too nice." I said, "Well, he's fine." But when I said this, what I was thinking about was the photo that Ryan sent at noon, a very ordinary-looking turkey sandwich, with the text, "I ate this again today, but I just saw a new ramen shop. I will bring you there next time." "I'll bring you next time." He always says this. "I'll bring you next time, I'll take you there next time, we'll be together next time." It was like he was sure there would be a next time, like he had a future between us mapped out, and I didn't even know why he was so sure. On Friday of the 3rd week, Ryan sent a message: "Are you free tonight?" I stared at the message for 30 seconds. It's been 2 weeks and he has never asked me out. He sent good morning, lunch, good night, and occasionally a photo of Central Park he took while running, but he never asked me, "Are you free tonight?" He gave me all the agency if I wanted more. I asked, "If I only want this now, then that's it." He is waiting for me. As he said, "I'm always available." I replied with one word: "Yes." He said, "That ramen shop. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up." I said, "No need to pick it up, I'll go by myself." He said, "Okay. See you at 7 o'clock. I took 2 hours off that afternoon. Jason was not at home when he went home to change clothes. He had a meeting in Brooklyn. I stood in front of the closet, looking at the neatly hung clothes, and suddenly I didn't know what to wear. It's been a long time since I dressed up for someone seriously. In the end, I chose a dark blue dress with a neckline that was neither high nor low, and the length was just above the knee. She paired it with a pair of black high heels, let her hair down, and put on light makeup. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at it for a long time. I felt that the person in the mirror was both familiar and strange at the same time. She looked like a woman going on a date, but there was a very careful and cautious light in her eyes, like a wounded animal, tentatively stretching out its claws, not sure whether it was food or a trap in front of it. When I went out, I sent Jason a text message: "Have dinner with colleagues. And we'll be back later." He replied instantly, "Okay, have fun." At 7 o'clock, I arrived at the ramen shop. It's a very small shop, on a quiet street in the East Village, with a red lantern hanging at the door. Ryan stood at the door, wearing a dark gray sweater, jeans, and sneakers. No suit, no tie, none of the things he would use to arm himself in court. He looks like an ordinary person. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. It's not the kind of deliberate, performative "wow you are so beautiful" kind of brightness, but the kind of natural, uncontrollable brightness, like a light being turned on. Then he smiled and said, "There you are." I said, "I'm coming." We walked into the store and sat by the window. The ramen is delicious, the soup base is rich, the noodles are chewy, and the barbecued pork melts in your mouth. But we didn't talk much. Not the awkward silence, the comfortable silence that doesn't need to be filled. Occasionally look up at each other, smile, and then continue eating. Halfway through eating, he suddenly said, "Emily, there is something I want to tell you." His tone changed. It wasn't the relaxed, friend-to-friend tone before, but a heavier, more serious tone. I put down my chopsticks and looked at him. He lowered his head and looked at the soup in the bowl. He was silent for a few seconds, then raised his head and looked into my eyes. "I've known you since high school." I was stunned. We were in the same high school, Springfield, Illinois. You were a grade below me. You don't remember me because we didn't talk in school. But I remember you. His voice was calm, but I could hear something underneath the calmness. It was an emotion that had been suppressed for a long time and had finally found an outlet. You were on the debate team and I was on the moot court. Once, your debate team's competition was held in the auditorium next to our classroom. I saw you speaking on the stage when I passed by. You were wearing a white shirt, your hair was tied into a ponytail, and you spoke very quickly, but every word was clear. You are refuting one of the other party's arguments, and you use 3 sentences to dismantle the other party's logic. He smiled, and there was something very gentle in that smile. I was standing in the hallway, holding a stack of law school brochures in my hands, thinking, this person is going to be great in the future. My eyes started to feel sore. Later you transferred to another school. You left at the end of your sophomore year, and no one knew where you went. I asked around, but no one knew. I thought I would never see you again in this life. He looked at me with an emotion in his eyes that I had never understood, but now I did. It was the expression of someone who had finally waited for a long time. At Jason's company dinner last month, I saw you standing next to him, wearing a black skirt and holding a glass of champagne that you didn't drink much in your hand. You look exactly like you did in high school, controlled, decent, and not letting yourself lose control. But there's something different in your eyes. When you were in high school, your eyes were bright, as if there was light shining through them. Your eyes were dark that night, as if a light had been turned to the lowest brightness. His voice dropped, so low that it was almost inaudible. I knew then that you were unhappy. My tears fell. In the ramen shop, in front of the steaming bowl of soup, under Ryan's calm gaze, I shed tears. Not because of emotion. It's because of being seen. This guy, someone I didn't even speak to in high school, he remembered the way I looked in my white shirt, remembered the speed of my words, remembered the light in my eyes. It took him a second to recognize me, a month to confirm my unhappiness, and 14 years to wait for someone he didn't know he would ever see again. And Jason, my husband, who I had slept with for 7 years, wanted nothing more than to see me fall apart. Ryan didn't come over to hug me, didn't say stop crying, didn't do anything. That crossed the line. He just took a tissue from the table and put it in my hand. I don't want to embarrass you, he said, I just think you should know. Because I don't want you to walk into a situation that you think is safe but is not when you don't know. I picked up a tissue and wiped my face, taking a deep breath. You were at the bar that day, I started. I went there on purpose, he said without evading. I know you live in that building. I know there is that bar downstairs. That night I drove to your building and sat in the car for 20 minutes. Then I went in, sat at the bar, and ordered that beer. He looked at me with no guilt or dodge in his eyes, only a very frank, almost naked sincerity. I'm waiting for you. I opened my mouth, not knowing what to say. But I didn't expect you to come over, he said. When you came over, I thought I was dreaming. When you said, are you free tonight? I was almost speechless. He lowered his head and drew a circle with his fingers on the table. Emily, I am not a noble person. I approach you with a purpose. It took me 14 years to find you, and I don't want to spend another 14 years waiting for the next opportunity. But I want you to know one thing, he looked up. I won't do anything to you that you don't want to do. I won't treat you like an experiment like him. I won't test how much you love me. I just need to know one thing, do you want me here? I looked at him. Look at the fine lines in the corners of his eyes. Look at his jawline that is slightly tense due to nervousness. Look at his slightly trembling fingers on the table. Here was a man who had faced the toughest opponents in court, who had never failed in the most complex business litigation, yet here he sat before me, his fingers shaking with nervousness over a woman's answers. Do I want him here? I don't know. All I know is that in front of him, I don't need to pretend. There is no need to play a sensible wife, there is no need to stand outside the door for 20 minutes and then send a text message, there is no need to suppress all the emotions deep in the chest and pretend that nothing happened. I can cry. He can wait. That's enough. That night I went with him to his apartment. It wasn't the polite come and sit at your house kind of way, but I stood in front of the ramen shop, looked at him and said, I don't want to go home. He looked at me for 3 seconds, then nodded and hailed a taxi. His apartment is on the top floor of an old red brick building in Tribeca. Not big, but very clean. The living room has a wall of bookshelves, packed from floor to ceiling. There was an open copy of The New Yorker on the coffee table, and next to it was a coffee cup with some unfinished cold coffee at the bottom. There is a gray blanket on the sofa, neatly folded. His cat, a fat orange and white cat, came out of the bedroom, looked at me, jumped up on the couch, curled up on the blanket and went back to sleep. His name is Oliver, Ryan said. He's not very smart, but he's very well behaved. I smiled a little. He gave me a glass of water and we sat on the sofa, Oliver snoring next to me. Outside the window was the night view of Manhattan, with lights on in the distance at the World Trade Center, and a ship moving slowly on the Hudson River. We chatted for a long time. Talk about his job, talk about his cat, talk about why he moved from Chicago to New York, talk about which blind date his mother recently introduced him to. He said that his mother asked him every Thanksgiving, "When are you going to get married?" And he said, "It's soon." His mother said, "You've been saying it for 6 years," and he said, "Wait a minute." He glanced at me when he said, "Wait a minute. I know what he's waiting for." It's late at night. The lights outside the window went out one by one, leaving only a few tall buildings in the distance still on. Ryan looked at the time and said, "It's time for you to go back." I didn't move. "I don't want to go back," I said. He was silent for a while. Then he turned and looked at me, his expression serious. "Emily, if you stay here because you want to stay here, that's fine. But if you stay here because you don't want to go back, that's different." I looked at him. "I don't want you to choose me because you're running away from him," he said. "I don't want to be your fallback. I want you to choose me because you want me." My throat is sore again. "But I don't want you to go back alone," he said, his voice softer. "So if you don't want to leave tonight, you can sleep in the bedroom and I'll sleep on the sofa. You are safe, you have peace of mind, you are in charge." I nodded. He brought me a clean t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants and pointed in the direction of the bedroom. The bathroom had clean towels and the toothbrush was in the drawer, new. When I came out from the shower, he had already laid out a blanket on the sofa, wearing an old t-shirt, and was leaning on the armrest of the sofa, reading a book. Oliver lay on his stomach, rising and falling with his breathing. He saw me and smiled. "Go to bed early." I stood at the door of the bedroom, watching him shrinking his legs on the sofa and raising the book to his face, and suddenly felt something loosen in his chest. It's not the kind of violent, sudden loosening, but the kind that slowly, bit by bit, like a knot that has been tied for too long and finally found the thread. I slept very well that night. No dreaming, no waking up, no staring at the ceiling with my eyes open at 3 in the morning. I smelled the faint smell of laundry detergent on the pillow, listened to the occasional sound of turning books and Oliver's snoring from the living room, and sank into a deep and quiet place. When I woke up the next morning, Ryan had already made breakfast. Omelette, toast, avocado, and a cup of freshly brewed coffee. He placed breakfast on the small kitchen table, beside which he placed a small daisy picked from somewhere and inserted into a drinking glass. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well last night?" I said, "Very good." He smiled. "That's good." I sat at the small table, eating omelets, drinking coffee, and watched the sunlight in Manhattan light up little by little outside the window. There were still water drops on the petals of the daisy, which shone in the sunlight. "This is the best breakfast I've had in a long time." I came home that afternoon. Jason is not here. The living room was quiet, and the air smelled of his usual woody perfume. There is a bouquet of fresh flowers on the coffee table, white hydrangea with a little eucalyptus leaves. There is a note pressed next to it. "Emily, let's go to your favorite restaurant this weekend and I've made a reservation. Love you." I stood in front of the coffee table, looking at the bouquet of flowers and the note, and suddenly felt that everything was like a huge, absurd stage play. Jason plays a good husband on stage, and I play a good wife off stage. We are both acting, but there is only one author of the script. I took out my phone and sent Ryan a message. "Thank you for last night." He replied instantly, "Thank you for coming." I stared at the screen for a long time, then locked the screen, put the phone on the coffee table, picked up the bouquet of flowers, and threw it into the trash can. Over the next week, my relationship with Ryan moved at a strange pace. We texted every day, called occasionally, and met up again on the weekends, this time for a walk in Central Park. He took Oliver on a leash. Yes, he walked the cat, and Oliver was reluctantly dragged along. I bought 2 cups of coffee, and we walked around and around the lake until the sun went down. He never did anything out of line. No holding hands, no hugs, no kisses. He didn't even say "I like you." He just stayed with me, like one person stays with another person. It was too simple to be true. But I know it's true. Because his eyes don't deceive. Every time he looked at me, there was that very old light in his eyes. It must have been this light in his eyes 14 years ago when he held the law school brochure and saw a girl in a white shirt speaking on the stage in the corridor of Springfield High School. And I began to find that there was light in my eyes. It wasn't because of him, it was because I discovered that I could still have light. I thought I could live like this, maintaining a delicate balance between 2 men, one who gives me security but not freedom, and one who gives me freedom but not security. I could continue to live in Jason's apartment, sleep in Jason's bed, eat Jason's cooking, and then take a few hours a week to see Ryan and be my true self in front of him. I thought I could. But Jason never lets me think for too long. That day was Saturday. Jason said he was going to Boston on a business trip to meet a client and would be back on Sunday night. Before he left, he kissed my forehead and said, "Wait until I come back." I said okay. After he left, I sent a message to Ryan. He went on a business trip and won't be back until tomorrow. Ryan said, "Do you want to come over?" I thought about it and replied with one word, "Yeah." I changed my clothes, put on a little makeup, and stood at the entrance for a moment when I went out, thinking about whether to leave a note. Forget it, he won't come back until tomorrow, I'll be back in the afternoon. I arrived at Ryan's apartment. When he opened the door, he was wearing a white t-shirt and his hair was a little messy, as if he had just woken up. He saw me, smiled, and let me in. Oliver met me at the door, rubbed my ankle, and walked away with his fat body. It was an ordinary afternoon. We sat on the couch and watched a movie, and he chose an old one, When Harry Met Sally. Halfway through watching it, he said, "Do you think this movie is actually about one thing? Can men and women be friends?" I said, "What do you think?" He thought for a moment and said, "It can be done. But not if one person likes another person." I turned to look at him. He was looking at me too. The movie is still playing. The background music is the kind of jazz from the 1980s, and the sound of the saxophone is lazy and ambiguous. The sun shone in through the window and fell on his shoulders, making the white t-shirt a little transparent. He reached out and placed his hand on the back of the couch, about 2 inches from my shoulder. "Can I?" he asked. My heart skipped a beat. "What?" "Touch you." My breath stopped for a second. Then I nodded. His hand fell on my shoulder, very lightly, as if he was afraid it would break if he applied too much force. His fingers were slightly cool, but his palms were warm. His fingertips lightly slid over the bones of my shoulder, as if he were touching something he had waited a long time to finally touch. "Emily," he said, his voice low as if he was speaking to himself, "I've been waiting for you for 14 years. I don't care if I wait a little longer. But I want you to know." He turned his head and looked into my eyes. "I'm here. Not because you're fragile, not because you need someone to save you, not because your husband treats you badly. I'm here because you are you. I've known it since you stood on that stage 14 years ago and said, 'The other side's argument has 3 logical holes.'" My eyes grew hot. "You are the one who shines on the stage," he said. "You are not someone's wife, someone's experimental subject, or someone's retreat. You are the person who I stand in the corridor, holding a stack of brochures, thinking, 'This person will definitely be great in the future.'" His fingers slipped from my shoulders and held my hand. "You're not happy right now, and that's okay. You don't know what you want right now, and that's okay. You're not ready to leave him right now, and that's okay. I'm here. I'll always be here." I finally cried. It's not the kind of silent, drop-by-drop crying, but the kind of crying that has been suppressed for a long time and finally bursts, like a flood. I cried until I was shaking all over, crying until I couldn't breathe, and crying until my face was covered with tears and snot. Ryan didn't say stop crying. He just pulled me over, let my head rest on his shoulder, and patted my back gently with one hand, like comforting a child who had a nightmare. I cried for about 10 minutes. After crying, I felt that my whole body was hollowed out, but that kind of emptiness is not bad. It is a kind of emptiness that has been cleaned up, like a room full of old furniture that has finally been vacated. I lifted my head from his shoulder and looked at him. His t-shirt was completely soaked from my crying. He looked down and smiled. "It's okay," he said, "I have to wash it anyway." I laughed too, crying and laughing like a fool. Then I made a decision. I leaned over and kissed the corner of his mouth. Very light, very short, like a dragonfly touching water. He was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes lit up, not the kind of finally waiting kind of brightening, but the kind of she took the initiative kind of brightening, as if something was ignited. "Emily," he said, his voice a little hoarse, "are you sure?" I looked at him. There was desire, restraint, waiting, uneasiness in his eyes, a very complex and intertwined emotion. But his question has only one meaning: do you really want it, or are you just escaping? I thought about it seriously. I really thought about it. And I said, "I'm sure." That afternoon, we did. It's not the intense, tension-filled kind you see in movies. It's very slow, very light, and very serious. Before everything he does, he always asks, "Is this okay? Does it hurt? Are you okay?" He asked so many questions that I couldn't help laughing and said, "Can you stop asking?" He said, "No. Because you deserve to be asked." After we were done, we were lying on the bed, and Oliver ran in at some point and curled up at our feet. The sunlight outside the window turned orange, and the Manhattan skyline was dyed in a warm tone. Ryan lay on his side, supporting his head with one hand and slowly rubbing circles on my back with his other hand. "What are you thinking?" he asked. What am I thinking? I'm thinking about Jason. It's not the guilty thought, it's the calm thought, like looking at someone who has nothing to do with you. Jason is in Boston, having dinner with clients, scrolling through his phone in a hotel room, probably thinking, what is Emily doing now? He doesn't know what I'm doing. He didn't know that I was lying on the bed of a man named Ryan, covered with a gray blanket, and a fat orange and white cat was snoring at my feet. Little did he know that his test subject had finally made it out of the lab. I was thinking, I said, that I never seemed to do anything for myself. Ryan's fingers paused. Everything, I said, choosing a college, choosing a major, choosing a job, choosing him, it's all shoulds. I should go to a good university, I should find a stable job, I should marry someone with good conditions, and I should be a decent wife. No one has ever asked me, what do you want? I looked at the ceiling. I never asked myself that either. Ryan's fingers started drawing circles again. Now you ask, he said, what do you want? I closed my eyes and thought about it carefully. What do I want? I want to wake up in the morning without having to check if there's anyone else's hair on my pillow. I want to go home at night without having to stand outside the door for 20 minutes. I want someone who is really waiting for an answer when they ask me, are you okay? I want my tears not to be someone else's trophy. I want my love not to be someone else's experimental data. I want to be a human being. Not a character, not an experimental subject, not a wife in need of respectability. Just one person. I don't know, I said, but I'm starting to know. Ryan smiled and pulled me into his arms. That's enough. The sun was very nice that afternoon. I fell asleep in Ryan's arms without dreaming or waking up. I slept until dark. When I woke up, the apartment was dark, Ryan was not on the bed, and Oliver was not at his feet. There was a sound in the living room. It was Ryan talking on the phone. His voice was so low that I couldn't hear what he was saying. I sat up, put on his t-shirt, and walked barefoot to the living room. Ryan stood by the window, his back to me, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was soft, but I caught a few words. She's here with me, I know, I'll handle it. He hung up the phone, turned around, and saw me standing at the entrance of the corridor. His expression changed, not surprise, but something very complicated that I couldn't understand. What's wrong? I asked. He was silent for 2 seconds. Then said, Jason just called me. My blood suddenly ran cold. What? He knows, Ryan said, his voice calm. He knows everything. What happened with you at my place, what happened when we met before, and even, he planted someone outside my door. I stood at the entrance of the corridor, wearing his t-shirt and bare feet, feeling as if my whole body had been thrown into ice water. He's not on a business trip, Ryan said, putting his phone on the coffee table. He's downstairs. My knees went weak. I held onto the wall and slowly squatted down. Ryan came over, squatted in front of me, held my face in his hands, and forced me to look at him. Emily, listen to me. His voice was steady, like a lawyer facing the worst-case scenario in court. He's not going to hurt you. I'm here. But you need to make a decision. Now. I looked into his eyes. Dark brown, almost black in the dim living room. There was no fear or panic in those eyes, just something very firm, like an anchor. You can choose to go down and talk to him, he said, or you can choose to stay here. No matter what you choose, I won't let you face it alone. I was squatting on the ground, wearing his t-shirt, my hair disheveled, and the makeup on my face had long been stained by tears. I looked probably the most miserable in my life, but my mind was clear. Very sober. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and changed into my own clothes. Ryan stood in the corridor and looked at me. He didn't stop me or say don't go down. He just stood there, like a pillar, like a wall, like something I could lean on but not force me to lean on. I got dressed, walked to the entrance and put on my shoes. Ryan handed me one of his jackets, a dark blue jacket, very thick, with a faint smell of laundry detergent on him. Put them on, he said. It's cold outside. I put it on. When we went downstairs, the lights in the elevator were blindingly white. Ryan stood next to me, not holding my hand or putting his arm around my shoulders, but standing very close, so close that I could feel the warmth of his arm. On the first floor, the elevator door opened. Jason stood in the hall. He was wearing a black windbreaker, his hair was messed up by the wind, and there was no expression on his face. He stood there like a sculpture, with the cold November wind of New York and the neon lights of Manhattan behind him. He saw me, the dark blue jacket I was wearing, and Ryan standing behind me. The corners of his mouth moved. It wasn't a smile, it was a twitch that I don't know how to describe. Emily, he said, go home. Just 2 words. Go home. His voice was calm as if nothing had happened. Just as calm as when I came home early that night and he told me he's back at the dinner table. just like every day for the past 7 years. But I saw something in his eyes, something I had never seen in those blue eyes. Fear. He was afraid. Not because you love me, not because you are afraid of losing me. It was because his test subjects were out of control. It was because the code he had spent 7 years trying to crack suddenly changed on his own. It's because the woman he thought would always stand outside the door for 20 minutes and send text messages walked out of someone else's elevator wearing someone else's clothes. It wasn't losing me that he was afraid of. What he fears is losing. I looked into his eyes and suddenly everything became clear. It was like a pair of glasses that had been blurry for a long time were finally wiped clean, and I saw that everything, his control, his testing, his tenderness, his cruelty, every meal he cooked for me, every bouquet of flowers he sent me, every I love you he said, was part of this game. He is not a husband who does not love me. He is a person who needs to manipulate others to confirm his existence. And I am his most proud work. I'm not going back, I said. Jason's expression didn't change, but the fear in his eyes deepened. Emily, calm down, he said, his voice still gentle and patient, like talking to a child having a tantrum. Do you know what you are doing now? Do you know who he is? He glanced at Ryan, and there was something very contemptuous in that look. Ryan Hayes, right? Partner at Sullivan and Cromwell. Do you know why he's in your life? You know he I know, I said, he told me. High school. Debate. Law school brochure. 14 years. Jason's mouth closed. He told me everything, I said. He told me he had a purpose, he told me he was waiting for me, he told me it wasn't an accident that he approached me. He didn't lie to me. But you, I looked at Jason. You lied to me for 7 years. You told me you loved me, but you were testing me. You told me you cheated because I cared about you, but you were enjoying my pain. You told me you were a good husband, but you took my restraint as your victory. My voice was shaking, but I didn't stop. Jason, you are not in love with me. You are enjoying my love for you. The hall was so quiet that you could hear the sound of water running in the heating pipes. Jason stood there, the expressions on his face peeling off layer by layer, first the mask of the gentle, good husband, then the mask of the calm, in-control negotiator, and then a face I had never seen before, as naked as a child who had seen through all the tricks. You know that night his voice suddenly changed, becoming unlike him, becoming a little hoarse and a little broken, that night when you were standing outside the bedroom door. Do you know what I was thinking? I didn't speak. I was wondering if she would open the door and come in this time. I even hoped that she would open the door and come in. I even he paused and his Adam's apple rolled. I even deliberately asked Sarah to laugh louder. I want you to hear it. I want you to be unbearable. I want you to open the door, rush in, scold me, hit me, let me see what you are like. His eyes were red. But you didn't. You sent that text. You went downstairs. You went to the bar. He glanced at Ryan, and the contempt in his eyes was gone, replaced by something I couldn't define, like jealousy, like anger, like a kind of grievance of why should it be him? You chose him. I didn't choose him, I said, I chose myself. The moment I said these words, I felt like something was broken in my body. It's not the kind of painful break, it's the kind like a string that has been stretched for too long and finally breaks, but after it is broken, it is not painful, but quiet. A vast, unprecedented silence. Jason looked at me, tears falling from his blue eyes. This was the first time I saw him cry. Emily, he said, his voice breaking like glass, you loved me so much before, how could you not love me anymore? I stood in front of him, wearing Ryan's jacket, with Ryan's quiet, non-rushing, non-interfering presence behind me. I looked at Jason's tears, at the man I had been married to for 7 years, the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. Then I said something. This sentence has been in my mind for so long that I almost thought it would never be uttered. Because I finally learned to take my love back. Jason stood there, crumbling like a tree with its roots cut off. His lips were trembling, his hands were trembling, his whole body was trembling. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I turned around and looked at Ryan. He stood 2 steps behind me, his expression calm, but his eyes were not calm. There were too many things in his eyes, distress, worry, anger, and something too heavy that I understood but didn't know if I should accept. Ryan, I said, I want to be alone for a while. He nodded. Okay. No questioning, no holding back, no are you sure? He just nodded and took the keys out of his pocket and handed them to me. If you don't want to go home, you can come to my place. I'm staying in a hotel tonight. I looked at the key in his hand and didn't take it. No, I said, I'll go back to my place. He was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled, and there was heartache, understanding, and a little bit of almost invisible loss in that smile. Okay. I walked out of the lobby into the cold November breeze in New York. Jason didn't chase him out, and neither did Ryan. I was walking alone on the streets of Manhattan, wearing Ryan's jacket, with the subway card he forgot to take out and a pack of opened mints in his pocket. I've been gone for a long time. Walk from Tribeca to Soho, walk from Soho to the West Village, walk from the West Village to Chelsea. There are fewer and fewer people on the streets, and the lights in the shops are turned off one by one, leaving only 24-hour pharmacies and the occasional taxi passing by. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I stood at an intersection in Chelsea and looked up at the sky. There are no stars visible in the New York sky, only the flashing red aviation warning lights on the tops of tall buildings and the ever-extinguishing neon lights of Times Square in the distance. I took out my phone. There are 17 unread messages. 12 from Jason. The first few are "Where are you? Answer the phone, let's talk," and the latter few become "I was wrong, please come back, I won't do that again." The last message was sent out at 1:17 in the morning, with only 3 words, "I love you." 3 from Ryan. The first one is, "Are you home yet?" The second one is, "Don't lose my subway card in your coat." The third one is, "Good night, Emily." 2 more are from my mom. She probably saw something on Facebook and asked me, "What's going on between you and Jason?" I locked my phone and put it in my pocket. I didn't go home. I took a taxi to the company. There was no one in the office building at 2 o'clock in the morning. The security guard took one look at me and probably recognized which department I belonged to, so he didn't stop me. I swiped my card into the office, sat at my desk, turned on my computer, and started working. I pulled up family financial records for the past 3 years. Jason's account, my account, joint account, real estate certificate, investment account, insurance policy. I spent an entire night organizing everything into a clear table. At dawn, I made a phone call. Not for a lawyer, although I did find one later, but for myself. I said something to myself on the phone. That sentence is what my mother should have said to me when I was 6 years old but didn't. It's what I should have said to myself but didn't say it when I got married at the age of 23. It's what I should have said to Jason but didn't say it when I was standing outside my bedroom door at the age of 31. Emily, you deserve better. Not a better man, not a better marriage, not a better life. Be a better version of yourself. That morning, I returned home. Jason was sitting on the sofa in the living room, looking like he hadn't slept all night. His eyes were red and swollen, his beard was unshaven, and he was wearing a wrinkled shirt. The ashtray on the coffee table was full of cigarette butts he didn't usually smoke. When he saw me coming in, he stood up suddenly. "Emily, Jason," I said, placing a document on the coffee table, "this is a draft of the divorce agreement. Take a look and see what needs to be changed." He froze. He looked at the document and then at me, with a completely defeated light in his eyes that I had never seen before. "I won't sign it," he said, his voice hoarse. "I won't sign it." "You're going to sign," I said, my voice calm, "because you know that if you don't, I'm going to have my lawyers take every piece of evidence of an affair, every credit card statement, every time you slept with another woman in my bedroom, to the court. Your company, your investors, your clients, they're going to see everything." His face turned pale. "Are you threatening me?" "It's not a threat," I said, "it's just telling you what will happen. Just like when you told me that you cheated on me because you wanted to see how much I loved you, I'm just telling you what I would do." I looked at him. "Jason, for the past 7 years, you've been testing my boundaries. Now I'm going to tell you where my boundaries are, right here. On this coffee table. In this document." He stood there, his lips trembling for a long time, and finally said a word. "You really don't love me anymore?" I looked at him. This man I have loved for 7 years. This man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, this man who treats me as a guinea pig, his cheating as a test, and my restraint as a victory. "I don't know if I love you," I said, "but I know I don't want to love you anymore." I moved out of that apartment. I found a small apartment in Chelsea, with 1 bedroom and 1 living room, and the windows faced a quiet street. The landlord is a retired drama teacher who has 2 cats. There is a bakery downstairs that has been open for 30 years. And the smell of cinnamon and butter starts to waft out at 7 o'clock every morning. Ryan came to help me on moving day. He drove a rented van and helped me move a few boxes and an IKEA bookcase up to the 3rd floor. We spent 3 hours putting things away, and he stood in the middle of the living room, looked around, and said, "It's pretty good." "Yeah," I said, "it's pretty good." Oliver followed. Ryan said that he kept barking at home, probably because he knew he was going out and had to follow him. Oliver walked around the living room, finally jumped up on the windowsill, curled up in the corner with the best sunlight, and started snoring. Ryan looked at Oliver and smiled helplessly. It seems he decided to move here. He can, I said, but you can't. He turned to look at me. His expression was not hurt, he just nodded seriously. I know. That night we sat on the floor of our new home and ate takeout, Chinese food, kung pao chicken and chow mein. Oliver rolled over on the windowsill, exposing his furry belly. Outside the window is the night view of Chelsea. It is not as bustling as Midtown Manhattan, but it has a quiet, ordinary warmth. Ryan, I put down my chopsticks and said, you said that day that you would not be my fallback. Yeah. Then what are you now? He thought for a moment. I'm a door, he said. You can open it any time, you can close it any time. I'm right here. I looked at him. He was sitting on the floor, leaning against the newly assembled bookcase, holding a box of fried noodles in his hand, with a little soy sauce stain on his face. He doesn't look like a lawyer making millions a year. He looks like an ordinary guy eating takeout on the floor of a friend's house who has just moved. I wouldn't choose you, I said, at least not yet. He nodded. I know. I need to be alone. I need to know who I am, when I'm not tied to anyone. I need to know what I want, not because my mother said I should want it, not because you waited 14 years to make me feel like I owe you something, not because I hate Jason so I have something to prove. I took a deep breath. I need to know that if no one is looking at me, I'm still not alone. Ryan put down the fried noodles and looked at me seriously. Emily, have you ever thought about something? What? You keep saying I need, I want, I should. You keep explaining. But you don't owe anyone an explanation. His voice was soft, but every word was heavy. You don't have to explain to me why you don't choose me now. You don't have to explain to Jason why you left. You don't even have to explain to your mother why you got divorced. You only have to do one thing. He looked at me. Alive. Live like a normal person. Get up in the morning, make coffee, go to work, come back from get off work, feed the cat if you leave Oliver behind, and go to bed. Repeat it again tomorrow. Slowly, you will find that you don't need anyone's permission to live your day. My eyes became hot again. You don't have to do anything great, he said, you just have to be yourself. After Ryan left that night, I sat alone on the floor of my new home, leaning against the newly assembled bookcase, listening to the sound of cars outside the window and Oliver's snoring. I didn't cry, I didn't laugh, I didn't do anything. I just sat there, like a person who just learned to breathe, feeling the air move in and out of my lungs. It turns out that this is what it feels like to be alone. It doesn't hurt. Not empty. Not cold. Just quiet. A month later, Jason signed the divorce agreement. The process was not as difficult as I thought. His lawyer made a few calls, my lawyer returned a few calls, the numbers were agreed upon, the documents were signed, and everything looked like a normal business transaction. On the day I signed the contract, Jason called me. Emily. Do you hate me? I stood in front of the window of my new home and watched the proprietress of the bakery downstairs closing the door. She moved the sign at the door, pulled down the iron gate, locked it, then turned around and disappeared around the corner. I don't hate you, I said, I just don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. You know, after you left, I discovered Jason, I interrupted him, don't say it. Don't say you found out you love me. Don't say you regret it. You say these words to make yourself feel better, not for me. He fell silent. Live your life, I said, and find someone you can truly respect, not someone you want to test. I hung up the phone. Then I deleted his number. The days passed. I get up at 7 o'clock every morning, make coffee, bake bread, and feed Oliver. He actually stayed. Ryan said he seemed to like me more. I go out at 8 o'clock, walk to the subway station, and take 3 stops to the company. I go home at 7 in the evening, sometimes cooking by myself, sometimes buying a croissant from the bakery downstairs. On weekends, I go for a run in Central Park, or read at home, or do nothing but sit in front of the window and watch the people on the street. Ryan messages occasionally. Not every day, not a set time. Sometimes it's won a case in court today. Celebrate with a photo outside his office window. Sometimes it's did Oliver scratch my favorite blanket, with a mock-angry expression. Sometimes it's just today's sunset is beautiful with a picture of the sunset over the Hudson River. He no longer says, I'll bring you next time. What he said was next time you come. He gave me the choice. And I chose not to go for the time being. It's not because I don't want to, it's because I know that if I go to him now, I won't know whether it's because I want him or because I'm afraid of being alone. 6 months later, I was promoted. Promoted from senior analyst to deputy director. My boss said, you've been in good shape lately and you're more focused than before. I say thank you. I know what he means by better than before. I used to be a person who consumed myself in marriage, but now I am a person who only needs to be responsible for myself. On the day of promotion, Ryan sent a message, "I heard you were promoted. Congratulations." I said, "How did you know?" He said, "I follow your company's LinkedIn." I laughed. Then he sent a long message. This is the first time he has sent such a long message. "Emily, I know you don't want to be defined by anyone. I also know that you don't need anyone now. But I still want to tell you one thing. These 6 months, I have been thinking about you every day. It's not the kind of thinking that I need you, but the kind of thinking that I care about how you are doing. I see you every day. The company's stock price is not for investment, but to know whether your company is doing well. I look at the weather every day, not for running, but to know whether you will get wet. I wait for your news every day, not to hear you say I miss you, but to hear you say today is not bad." He paused and sent another. "You said you didn't want to pick anyone. I respect you. But I want you to know that I will always be here. Not because you need me, but because I need you. This is not your burden, this is my choice." I sat at my desk and looked at these 2 messages for a long time. Then I replied, "Thank you for waiting for me." 1 year later, I stood in front of the window of my new home. Yes, I moved again, this time to a different building in Chelsea. A bigger one with a small balcony and a view of the Empire State Building's spire. Oliver was lying at my feet. He had gained a lot of weight and his belly was round, like a little fur ball. The proprietress of the bakery downstairs got to know me. Every morning when I went down to buy coffee, she would give me an extra croissant and say, "It's newly baked today, try it." My life is simple. Go to work, get off work, run, read, and occasionally have dinner with friends. I made several new friends, not the husband's friend's wife kind of friends, but real friends who were friends with me because of who I was. We went to Broadway shows together, went to flea markets in Brooklyn, and lay on the lawn of Central Park in the sun. My counselor said, "You're doing great right now." I said, "I know." She said, "Do you know what is the biggest difference between you now and a year ago?" I said, "What?" She said, "When you smile, your eyes light up." I was stunned for a moment. Then I remembered 14 years ago. In the corridor of Springfield High School, a boy holding a law school brochure stood at the door and saw a girl in a white shirt speaking on the stage. I thought, this person will be very powerful in the future. He was right. I'm really awesome. It's not about how much money I made, what job I got promoted, or what kind of divorce I got. It's because I finally learned to take back the love and put it on myself. One evening, I was watching the sunset on the balcony. The Manhattan skyline was dyed orange, a ship was slowly moving on the Hudson River, and the spire of the Empire State Building shone golden in the sunset. The phone rang. "It's Ryan. What are you doing?" "Watch the sunset. Does it look good?" "Very nice." He was silent for a while, and then said, "Emily, can I ask you a question?" "Ask." "Will you love again?" I leaned on the balcony railing and looked at the sky in the distance. The clouds were dyed pink and purple by the setting sun, like a watercolor painting. Oliver rolled over on his feet, exposing his furry belly and purring contentedly. I laughed. "Yes. But I won't lose myself again." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. Then I heard him laugh. That laugh was very light and warm, like the first cup of hot coffee in winter. "That's good," he said, "that's good." That night, I was walking alone on the streets of Chelsea. The street was very lively, the restaurant was full of people, music was playing from the bar, a couple walked past me holding hands, the girl was laughing and the boy was looking at her. I was wearing an old windbreaker, and I had Ryan's subway card in my pocket. I never returned that card to him, and he said there was no need to return it, since he didn't take the subway much anyway. My fingers touched the small scratch on the card, and I remembered that early morning a year ago, I was wearing his jacket, with this card and a pack of mints in my pocket, walking alone on the streets of Manhattan, not knowing where I was going. Now I know. The place I want to go is not someone's wife, not someone's salvation, not the answer someone is waiting for, not the code someone wants to crack. It's me. I walked into the crowd. Chelsea is lively at night, with people coming and going and lights twinkling. I walked among them, neither tall nor short, neither fast nor slow. I was just an ordinary, 31-year-old, divorced woman with a fat cat. Nothing special. But enough is enough. Enough.